the story.
We were attempting to listen to everybody involved in that program. And therefore, for me, to support the fact that we still need this visit.
Recapping the top story, East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS card to 43187.
The SAFM playwriting competition is back. After receiving hundreds of entries last year from South African writers of different ages and ethnic groups sharing their stories, now the time is yours. It's your story. You decide. SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound, the theatre of the mind, and to create a 1-hour radio play in English. Get writing now and submit your play before the 3rd of February 2025 for a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's easy to give up. But what's hard is going, yesterday I got nothing from working as hard as I could. Nothing happened from that. I'm going to do the same thing again today, but I'm going to try to go harder. That's the hardest thing in the world. To get up every day and give 100% and be in the same position that you were each day, but mentally know that you're trying and trying and trying. That's a real grind.
Kevin Hart there, American comedian and actor. Get up every morning, do it all again. Same energy. Yeah, not always easy to keep up with the consistency, right? It's 8 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to The Talking Point. I'm Cathy Mohlahlana with you until midday as we lead the conversations that move us. It is a Thursday. Welcome to the Thursday edition of The Talking Point. Quite a busy day that we are in for. Lots on the go currently. I see that in the Durban court, Duduzile Zuma Sambutla expected in court this morning over her role or involvement in the July unrest. We'll keep a close eye on that. Of course, there then also several developments on the go in as far as that DRC conflict is concerned. And of course, South Africa's involvement in all of that. How do you feel? How are you feeling about the communication that we have received from our government on the situation in the DRC? This is a classic case or moment that requires crisis communication and crisis management, right? And if we look at it from that lens, they're basics that need to be done. Crisis communication 101, right? Be prepared. Be prepared. Provide accurate information. Be proactive. Be consistent. Crisis communication 101. That's not even in the textbooks. That's stuff that you can pick up on Google even. But one wonders the extent to which these basics are being adhered to in what is such a significant moment for our country. And perhaps best highlighted and outlined by that media briefing yesterday, where we had the Defense Minister, Angie Motshekga, and the Deputy Defense Minister, General Bantu Holomisa, giving an update. And you would have heard the contradictions in terms of what they had to say. And this is really at the heart of the issue, because South Africans are asking, why is our defense force in the DRC? Yes, it's part of the SADC mission, but should they be there if they're not going to be well capacitated and well resourced? The issue around the resourcing of the SANDF has been a critical issue. It has been one of the key questions that our government has to answer. And so going into the media briefing yesterday, it must have been clear to everybody that South Africans expect very clear and accurate answers on this issue. Yet, what do we end up with? One person says this, the other person says that. Was there no briefing beforehand? Was there not a standard document that was given to everyone that says, okay, guys, this is what we're saying to the nation. Everybody read the script. Don't deviate. Because all this does is cause even more confusion. It gets people to ask even more questions. But let's not forget that the lives of 13 South Africans have been lost. Surely that makes a demand for the level of seriousness with which this should be dealt with. I don't know, but I just thought this is close on laughable. What is going on? Maybe I was the only one. I don't know. I'd love to hear from you on that. And while trying to make a sense of all of that, of course, now we're dealing with threats of a declaration of war and a diplomatic spat between our President Cyril Ramaphosa and Paul Kagame. And one just wonders, how did we end up here? Surely the escalation of this matter should not be where it is. Why does it give off the sense that this entire situation is being very, very poorly managed? I'll take your calls on this on 086 0002032. That's the number to dial, 086 0002032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Coming up on the show today, 10 o'clock our Municipal Watch will be looking at the Makhana municipality and specifically focusing on the water crisis there. Can you believe it? Yes, it is still ongoing, right? It has not been resolved, but we'll touch base to see where we are with that particular situation. And then the final hour of the show will be in conversation with the new head of research at Mistra, and that is Dr. Sandy Africa. We'll be taking a look at a number of issues. You know, her expertise, of course, is in the issue of international relations, conflict management, and really helping countries develop national security policies. So we'll also get her perhaps to weigh in on this particular issue. But just to go back to the open line and the contradiction that I was talking to you about. Listen again. Same briefing, same press conference. Make it make sense.
Personally went to Goma and I got briefing from all the generals. At no stage did they say they have no ammunition. We reinforce on the basis that because there's been this escalated hostilities, then we spoke back home with the meeting that General attended with the National Council of Arms to say it's going to be very important because the situation is very fluid and very problematic. It's going to be important for us to reinforce to make sure that we don't reach a stage where we don't have. But at no stage did any of the generals that I spoke, even the force leader said to me, we've run out of ammunition. No.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, Think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Toffees are well aware that only maximum points will help them out of the bottom half.
Lewin, great feat, brilliant, absolutely superbly done. Calvert-Lewin for Everton.
Meanwhile, the Foxes believe they are in dire need of victory to run away from trouble.
It's Jordan Ayew, back in goal. Jordan Ayew has scored for Leicester City, and those Leicester fans are celebrating wildly.
This is the Premier League. Experience the superb contest, Everton FC versus Leicester City FC, on Saturday 1 February at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Around Thursday, Friday morning, they said they are running out of ammunition and they wanted a reinforcement. The ammunition was sent by Saturday evening. It was in Congo. I mean, in eastern in Goma and so on. So in terms of the issues related to us coming back and bringing those troops back now, the situation currently is as follows. Our government is in contact with the United Nations so that they can facilitate the transportation of those people out of Goma.
All right, yeah, apologies for slip of fingers there, but those basically then, that was the Deputy Minister in the Defence Force, Bantu Holomisa. Earlier you would have heard the clip there by the Defence Force Minister, Angie Motshekga. Of course, it is quite a fluid situation, shall we say. Developments are coming through thick and fast. But again, I go back to where I started this morning. Crisis and crisis communication 101. And it looks like on that score, we are not really doing the best that we can when it comes to clearly managing the entire fallout across the board on this issue. Sydney, you're in Acornhoek. Good morning.
Good morning, Sydney. You live in Acornhoek, Pushpa listening in the school library. My sister, I join many of those who are calling, it is the Minister of Defense, our Minister of Defense, Ma Angie Motshekga, to say, can she herself approach the office of the Presidency and say, I give up my position to General Bantu Holomisa. For this reason, Holomisa himself is a trained soldier. He can be at the combat himself. He can be there and give instructions himself. He can wear the regalia and put on the boots himself and be with the soldiers right in the combat. And then Ma Angie Motshekga give to him a support. I support this because the cutting of the budget for the military, one of the mistakes we've made. Here in Akonuku, I 50 kilometers away from one of the finest efforts we once had in South Africa. They call it Wood Strait. I was there a few minutes there. You just see rooms. That which was the best which was there is still there today. They tell you, yeah, there was this. But it's no longer there. So at least let the military be right a soldier. And it happens that we are lucky. He's a soldier himself. Let's give it to the expert. Give Minister of Health to Dr. Aaron Mutali, because he's a doctor himself. If we can do that to run the Ministry of Health, let's give it to Holomisa to run Ministry of Defense, because he is a soldier himself. It makes sense.
All right, Sydney out in Acornhoek. He says you need somebody different at the head of the SANDF. He believes that Minister Angie Motshekga is not cut up for the job. Janusz, you're in Cape Town. Good morning. Good morning, Janusz. All right, it looks like we've lost him there. Lirotodi, you're in Mafikeng. Good morning.
Cathy, good morning.
Yes.
Yes, Cathy, I want to comment on this one on SANDF about how South Africans are responding to the loss of our troops there in Jersey. No, Cathy, we as South Africans, are we knowing the role of being to join an SANDF? If we know, I think we have understand what is happening. When we done military, we send a lot of things. He explained to you what's going to happen when the war comes. So now, here we are busy saying we must withdraw our troops there because we don't have to be there. The question is, since Paul Kagame said he can attack South Africa anytime he wants, so if he attacked and then we lost 100 troops at a time, are we going to surrender? So they're saying we are afraid of being losing more troops. Are we not going to surrender, not going to defend South Africa? This is the role of military. Anything can happen. This is what you've been taught in the training. You have been learning until you are done about your training. So we must understand this. Well, there is 3 years now in Russia there, where Russia fighting with Ukraine. Putin lost troops there. Putin is being asked by international media, he lost more troops. He said he's a part of military. It's working like this. So now I don't know why we are saying we have lost troops. What about the families of those troops? No, it's a part of military, Cathy.
Lirotodi, absolutely right. When people are involved in conflict and in war, there will be casualties. But there is a difference when one goes into a war and they're well capacitated for it, or goes into conflict and they're well capacitated for it, versus when they are not, right? Because you must be able to defend yourself. If you are unable to defend yourself, it means that you're basically offering yourself up. That's what it is.
So what we are saying, we are short ammunition in the RC to defend for our troops to defend themselves.
Not only ammunition, Lirotodi. If you listen to the various reports that have come through, it's resources by and large that goes beyond ammunition. We've talked about even, our fighter jets that would have been a significant support to that conflict that are simply not available.
Okay, so but what I'm saying to our troops, they must be ready for Rwanda, because Kagame had indicate that he can attack us anytime soon he wants. So, but normally we know there's Israel behind Rwanda there by supporting them with everything because of our case, the ICC taking Israel there. So now they have a loophole to make you turn through Rwanda to South Africa. So it's because of Israel. So thank you very much.
Okay, all right, Lirotodi, out in Mafikeng. And I mean, if that's the case, the reality is that South Africa should be talking down any threats of war or conflict, simply because we know the state of our SANDF, right? And that is no secret. Rudzani, you're in Frankfurt. Good morning, Rudzani.
Morning, Cathy. I think we have done ourselves a very huge favor, Cathy, as South Africans, by not putting any government, any political party as government. Today, we are just finding out that the ministers of ANC, they do lie. So, if you listen to what the general is saying, the general, I can only take him to be saying, the lady, Motshekga is lying, because the information that he's giving is even telling us that there were weapons that were sent, and they got an information that the guys complained that we do not have enough ammunition. So I'm saying, thanks very much to the GNU, because if it were to be the ANC, I can tell you now, we were not going to hear any deputy minister commenting. They were going to sit down and say, look, we will talk with folk tongues if we go out, all of us. Let the minister be the one to communicate. But in this instance, there is no one who can tell the general that keep quiet, we are going to give out this statement. In fact, even if they were to want to come up as a people who are going to be talking on the same level, the general was going to say, let's rather tell people the truth. So I'm saying, now we are reaping the benefits of the GNU. Thanks to South Africans, we have now identified that we have been lied to for too long. Thank you very much.
Rudzani, I will say that there, of course, was that sense of honesty, when the general was speaking, and it echoes what some have told us, including on this air. You remember Sbu that called earlier on in the week, and his son is fighting there, and he said that, when the minister was there in Goma, they told her about the fact that they had been running out of supplies. And the concern was that nothing had been done since. And the whole thing, Rudzani, is just, it is just embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It really is.
And what is shocking, ne? You then ask yourself, what else has they been lying about if we can get to this situation? So if we go and have maybe some of these very, I would say, important issues that we wanted answers, but we were just brushed and then were given one statement. Right now, I can tell you it's going to be chaos, because all these deputy ministers, at least thanks to GNU, they will be telling us the truth. The ministers of the ANC, they can continue to lie, but it's going to be very difficult now that we have got policemen behind them.
Okay. Rudzani, thanks for that view out in Frankfurt. Let me head over to Witbank. Maropeng, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Casey. How are you?
Good. Go for it.
Listen, mine is just to express surprise at the surprise that we South Africans are expressing regarding the type of situations we find ourselves in. A multiplicity of situations. You will recall, Casey, that during the COVID time, we had a difficulty with scandal after scandal regarding how money was being used. Today, Zuma's daughter is going to court because there were problems with the riots. There was life accident. There was a cholera situation in Hammanskraal now the other day. The problem that we have in South Africa is a death of leadership. We don't have the requisite leadership to be able to take us forward as a country. We are supposed to be a very powerful force, not just in Africa, but in the world. But we lack leadership at the top to take us forward in the manner in which we are supposed to be taken forward. Just give it as an example. We don't have to talk any further about it, about the contradictions that we see within the same administration. We have that situation today because we South Africans are unfortunate to be experiencing a death of leadership as we speak right now. That's the problem we have.
And in a situation like this, it clearly also is contributing negatively to the situation. Think about even the choice of language that is being used, right? Anybody who and the officials know this, right? They know the sensitivities around diplomacy, the choice of language, the choice of words. And so if we look at the spat between President Cyril Ramaphosa and Paul Kagame,
yes,
much of it being sparked by the Rwandan army being referred to as militia by our president. And it's just it's about a level of care that and that we need to be putting into. But it's like it's just it's
quite
pedestrian, man.
It's like me and you. The country is run by me and Marupi. It can't be. These people are supposed to know how to communicate these sensitive things. These people are supposed to be trained how to communicate these sensitive things. But it appears like it is me and Marupi who's talking about such sensitive things. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about our the loss we've encountered there. I don't want to talk about the immaturity in which we seem to be handling our situation in the DRC. That's a technical thing. I don't understand it. I don't want to get into it. But generally speaking, what we seem to be seeing is that we have a leadership that is completely unaware of what it is supposed to be doing in a situation of this nature. It's embarrassing.
Marupeng in Woodbank, let's leave it there for this morning. It's 9:30, taking your latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. Proceedings at the Durban Magistrates Court have been delayed due to a power outage experienced in various parts of eThekwini. Some areas in the city have been without power since yesterday afternoon. And 3 Israeli hostages are expected to be freed by Hamas later today in the third prisoner exchange between the two sides. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
SABC CSI, in partnership with SAFM, will be giving away 20 laptops to Tetlanyo Secondary School in Kimberley on the 31st of January 2025. Tetlanyo Secondary School has been nominated by the SABC to receive 20 laptops after writing a donation request to enhance their ambitions to be 4IR compliant and increase the number of learners ready to participate fully and productively in the country's economy. Tune in to SAFM on the 31st of January and listen to The Talking Point, broadcasting live from the Tetlanyo Secondary School. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. This contradiction of minister and deputy minister, it is really shocking. It's really shocking. The other one says this, the other one says this. What is the truth there? Are they running out of ammunition or what? And I like what Paul Kagame said about President Ramaphosa. He exposed them now. Because he's saying, on the other side, he's saying South Africa should not be in there. It's just Ramaphosa and Philip Tshisekedi's issues, why South Africa is there in that region. I don't know if he's maybe referring already that they should be, the peacekeepers must be from that region, or what he meant, I don't know. Now we will see about all these things, Katie. We will see what's going to happen. Thank you very much. Marumo.
Good morning, Cathy and the team. I echoed Sydney in Akonug's sentiment. President Cyril Ramaphosa made a big mistake by appointing Me'enji Motshekga as the Minister of Defense. He should have appointed General Bandu Holomisa as the Minister of Defense and Me'enji as his Deputy Minister. So Tisinyola in Mafefe Limpopo. Thank you, Cathy.
Hi, Cathy. It's Linda here. You're spot on. Crisis 101 communication. Please write the manual. I think it is absolutely horrifying what's been happening. When did the president speak to us? Yesterday. It's a bit late. Anyway, I think some people should really become informed. They were not there to fight a war. They were there to keep peace. Nothing else, nothing more. Thank you, Cathy.
Hi, Cathy. Chad here from Cape Town. Just wanted to comment on the topic. I think it's clear that the ANC has no idea how to handle this country or run this country. And I just want to remind them that they're on their way out. And the DA as well. It's becoming very clear that ANC, DA, they're going to no longer exist. We're going to vote them out. Thanks.
Thanks for those WhatsApp voice notes. We're still taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. It's your national roundtable. In Nelspruit, Ruben, good morning.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning.
Yes, Ruben.
Good morning. Yes, Cathy. Cathy, we want to send our condolences to the families of the lost men and women of our militaries in the DRC. Cathy, I've got a few questions, but I'm going to mention names. Where is Minister Enoch Kotongwane Finance Department? Where is Treasury? Because these are the guys who sit with the purse. Right. Let's go and say, remember Dinel? Dinel is a national asset. It's a department. Dinel is all about military equipment, hardware. We used to have Dinel as a threat to other countries only, globally, because it was manufacturing military hardware during apartheid. Where is Dinel? Where is Dinel leadership? A caller mentioned military council a few minutes ago during the open line. The military council, Dinel, Minister of Finance, Treasury. Let me not talk about Bantu Holomisa and the lady Mutsecha. However, I'm saying Dinel is a strategic asset. The leadership in Dinel, the leadership in the military council. Let's bring in this, the intelligence. These are people who should be sitting and looking at the situation as it is unfolding right now, this morning, or since the past 48, 36 hours. So where is Dinel? Because Dinel is all about military hardware. Treasury, finance, the leaders of this department should be sitting down and say, in view of this current development, what are we seeing? We have got Sasol Group. We have got Sasol. But we're paying high fuel prices. But we sit with Sasol next door. We have got Dinel. The language from the DRC is we were running short out of military equipment and this and the other thing. Where are the leaders now? Because Dinel manufactures those things.
Yeah.
Where is Dinel?
Ruben, don't forget what has happened to Dinel over the last 5 to 10 years or so. And maybe if we talk about recent history, just the last 3 years, an organization that has needed bailouts from government, staff not being paid. Do you remember that time when Dinel employees were even taking their lives, some of them, due to the fact that they had not been paid? And all of that was happening under government's watch.
I'm with you, Cathy. I'm with you. During the era of the crisis of Dinel, there was even newspaper clips where some of the big guys within Dinel joined the Israeli military and the intelligence and the likes and the likes. Cathy, in your headlines, if I may change sex, please, if you can allow me. In your headlines, the lady speaks of the Mutua lady thing that he spoke about yesterday. Yesterday night, in the show of the gentleman who goes in between 10 and 12, Oliver Dixon, he reads what the U.S. has changed their mind and reinstated yesterday night. I want to take SABC again on task here. Guys, research some of these things. Be consistent. I'm not taking you on to Cathy, please forgive me. I'm just saying, you can't be repeating the thing that was done 4 o'clock yesterday, and there were changes overnight concerning the very same thing. Because it tells us also that we are not proactive in anything. We as a country, we as a people are not proactive in anything. Cathy,
All right.
Sasol, please.
Now, Ruben out in Nelspruit, yeah, thanks for that feedback there. You're right. There have been a lot of developments, including on the issue around the ban, right, coming out of the US, or the freeze on foreign aid, and then the subsequent waiver. And that's also created the confusion, because there's this waiver. Is it a lifeline? Is it not? I think where things are right now is that many of those organizations that had received the order to stop the provision of services have not received alternative communication, rescinding that decision or withdrawing that decision. So as things stand, yes, the waiver could provide some kind of lifeline, but nothing has changed much, at least for those organizations in South Africa, in as far as the work that they're doing is concerned. Kentosh from the Eastern Cape says, good morning, Cathy. The communication around the killing of our soldiers and what goes with it comes with no surprise. There are always those who try to hide the truth and those who speak the truth on the other hand. At the end of the day, they just confuse us as to what really happened. The government should appoint a spokesperson that will speak on such delicate matters. We look like amateurs that can be toppled any time when it comes to war. Let me go to Cape Town. Mbeko, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cathy.
Yes, you want to talk on something completely different?
Yes, no, I don't want to talk about the war. I want to talk about the road construction in Stake Strait in the Eastern Cape. It's a road construction from the town, which is a Stake Strait, to a hospital that is the oldest hospital in the town. It started in 2020. Till today, Katie, that road construction hasn't been complete. About 4 bridges are still to be constructed. The road is still gravel road, and we don't know what is happening. There is no communication from the Department of Transport in the Eastern Cape. I'm not sure if maybe you can ask from Onaki Binose, who is the spokesperson, as to what is happening, because last year the contractors, they came and they took all their equipment.
Mbeko, what kind of work has already been done? Because you talk about the construction of bridges. I imagine that they need to construct, different roads that will sort of be lead as exits onto the bridges. How much of the work, from just your layman's view, has been done?
Most of the work has been done, but it's just that the bridges that still needs to be constructed, and then the tar should follow after that. But there's no tar that has been laid.
Do you use this part of the road often, Mbeko?
When I'm in the Eastern Cape, yes, it's actually to my home village, which is Kromspruit, just before the hospital.
All right. So maybe what you can do for us, ask some of those that are at home to take pictures of what the road looks like. Because we did have an issue raised yesterday on the open line about roads in Bizana that we're going to be following up on. So what we'll do is that we'll collect all of these and make them part of that conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. I will do.
Just send them on our WhatsApp line, all right?
Yes, I will do.
Thanks, Mbeko. Let me go to Marikana. Lutando, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning to your listeners. I think the first point of departure is that we must understand within the government of national unity, there are norms and standards that are manifesting itself. And communication is one of the areas which needs to be strengthened, which I agree with you in terms of the challenges with crisis management and how government must speak in one voice. I think the second issue that we must be very understanding is that the UN and SADC peacekeeping force that has been deployed in the Eastern DRC has been deployed over a period of time. So as the tensions were getting lesser and lesser, operational decisions were taken, meaning reduced in certain equipment. At some point, we had the Royal flags that were there, and as the hostilities was reduced, determination was made. Now, what seems to have happened is that the M23 and the Rwandans understood that we were less and less capable. Remember, from a peacekeeping force, you engage only when engaged. Now, what has happened is that we South Africans and the UN and the Uruguayans and the Burkina Faso, all those countries that are there, they are there to keep stability and ensure that the people of Eastern DRC are not killed by rebels as during the fighting. Now, what has happened that we have seen now is that the attack on South Africa, one, was not expected, but two, we understand within the reductions of the budgets, we have introduced the SRD and other things that has taken fiscal priority. So when we look at all of these things, as much as we should be critical, we must understand all within context. But here we are dealing with a Rwandan-backed militia that is hell-bent on destabilizing the eastern Congo, but overall the eastern countries, because Burundi is supporting DRC and others.
Absolutely, Lutando. And I think that what you're saying in terms of the conflict that is happening in that part of the region, we have to look at it through the lens in which it has unfolded over the years. But look at what it has become now, at least from the vantage point of us here in the southernmost part. It is about South Africa's own role, South Africa's own contribution, and the questions about our military, all of these things that you have mentioned, these are things that through risk analysis, very easy for us to know that this was going to become an issue. If you go back even to the deployment of the SANDF in 2023, already, if you go on Defense Web, you will find experts that have written articles on articles raising concerns about the defunding of the military and how this affects our ability to actually contribute positively to our obligations, right? Whether under the name of peacekeeping or any other that we have signed up to. So it's not a surprise that we are here, that we have ended up here.
It indeed, Cathy, we all speak with one voice in the importance of putting resources into our military. I think the emphasis that we are placing is that it is important for South Africa to be part of bodies like SADC and UN and AU. One of the critical outcomes of AU was how Africa creates its own intervention forces, because one of the biggest challenges has been the role of colonial countries like France and others when they come and they intervene in regional wars. They then take a particular view that is aligned to resources that are available in those parts of the countries. But what is important as South Africans that we must understand, we belong in multilateral institutions, and these multilateral institutions speak of interventions that has to happen. It has happened in 1998 in Lesotho, it has happened in other countries, and it is important for us to commit forces and resources in ensuring we ensure peace and stability, not only in the continent, but in the world, by participating in SADC and UN peacekeeping missions.
All right, Lutando out in Marikana. And of course, we do have that SADC meeting, right, that is scheduled to take place. Again, even on that score, clarity of messaging. Can we have one clear message about why the SADC mission is in the DRC? Because as long as there is inconsistency in that messaging, it creates gaps. And the gaps are around, well, why then are our soldiers really there? Whose interests are they serving? Some of those questions would not arise if there was clarity of communication from SADC itself, taking the lead again on communicating on this matter, because this is not a South African mission. It is a SADC mission. We're going to take a quick break. Back with more of your calls.
I feel great, I feel nice.
Kosha, what's the goal with coiling on the highest, the summer level? What are we? Generations the legacy. Kabisi's call for Kumo side eye. That quasha of the drama context. It's Georgie Christmas vibes. It's the call on SABC Plus. Don't miss Generations the Legacy at 8 weekdays on SABC 1. Zanti for sure.
All SASA Gold Cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3#. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're still listening to The Talking Point, your open line, taking your calls on 086 000 2032. It's the National Round Table. Sherwin, you're in the Western Cape. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes, go for it, Sherwin.
Cathy, there is a very great concern, and we should not underestimate the statement of the Rwandan president to the imposter president Cyril Ramaphosa of the black and white settlers. We as a sovereign Aboriginal indigenous people take strong offense that a war are being waged at the expense of the Aboriginal people's ancestral land. What the previous caller has mentioned about our unpreparedness and the question of Daniel as well as Armscor, who was the manufacturers of hardware for our defense, that is to be questioned. What has happened to Daniel? And we know that it is tailor-made, that let us drive it to the ground and privatize it. That is the economic strategy. And it has been proven with the SAA, it has been proven with various SOEs. We can mention the list is endless. And then we just get a private owner who step in and buy whatever the entity is for R1, which is an insult. The readiness and the preparedness of our soldiers in infantry have to be questioned. What has happened to the South African Cape Corps? Why has it been the disband, or as we commonly know, the SAKK? What has happened to them? That was a beacon of hope for the South African nation. People who was prepared and ready to go into battle at any time. And it questions the integrity of the major generals and whoever is in charge. And I'm not even talking about the current Deputy Minister of Defense, General Bantu Mlamisa. He knows that from the SAKK or the South African Cape Corps, guys have stepped over into Mkonto Wesizwe. And that is what has sustained Umkhonto weSizwe throughout the years fighting against the unfair system of apartheid. And it raised a very big question. What is the interest of South Africa or individuals in South Africa who are the heads or occupy senior positions in the imposter government?
Okay. All right, Sherwin. We've heard you. Sherwin out in the Western Cape. Sfiso, you're in KZN. Good morning.
Greetings, Cathy and the listeners. My take is more, Cathy, on the storyline since the beginning of the week. I think judging the SANDF by what has happened in DRC will not be a fair statement. We know very well that we've got very much capable men and women who are wearing the uniform that you always see on the National Armed Day, demonstrating how capable they are and how safe the country is. I think the problem started when even the leaders and politicians like Julius Malema started to say the SANDF cannot even protect the cabbage. Now that's a very negative positioning of the country and showing us as weak. Even on all media platforms, I never came across a story where it is reported that this is how many M23 rebels have died during this course. We are only focusing on how many South Africans were killed, whereas maybe the storyline should be balanced to say, yes, 7 or 9 were killed, but also M23 rebels. This is how many that were killed. So I think we need to change the narrative because it's just a somber moment and it makes us South Africa feel desperate and weak, and it's going to have a certain effect even in other aspects of life, even sports. When Bafana go plays in other countries in Africa, they will now start to be seen as weak. And I think as SAPC, maybe you need to just see how you can...
Isn't it right for us to focus on the South African perspective?
It is correct, but I'm saying, Cathy, as a media, you have a mandate to give us a balanced story. Like right now, South Africa is being portrayed as weak, and in some other countries, you will never find their main media portraying their country as
whose fault is it that South Africa is portrayed as weak? Because if you think about it, the weaknesses that are being highlighted here are around the capacity challenges that the SANDF is facing. And I certainly haven't gotten the impression that there's a view that our soldiers are useless. That's not the view that I'm getting. It's that we have very, very dedicated men and women on the front lines, but they're not being given the support they need, which is setting them up for failure.
Yeah, I agree, Cathy, but I'm not targeting SAPC as a whole. I'm talking about media at large because some of these things have been said on Twitter, and you know Twitter is far-reaching and is distributed amongst other countries and many people. But basically what happened in the DRC is just complacency because even the minister, the way she was engaging yesterday, she was more defensive. She didn't tell us the procurement policy for the soldiers that are deployed there. I've never heard the minister saying, I was with the generals. They never told me that they were running low on stock. What will be the procurement policy for them? Why would they call a minister if they are running short of ammunition? So you can see that we have deployed people who have no understanding in terms of how to engage with the very complex matters of military and all of these things.
All right, Sfiso, thanks for the call. Donald, all right, it looks like we've lost Donald there out in Rustenburg. Yeah, well, thank you all for your contributions to this conversation on the open line. On the other side of the 10 o'clock news update is Municipal Watch. Today we're going to be focusing on the Makana municipality and the, unfortunately, ongoing water crisis there. For now, it's time for your latest news update.
In our top stories, East African community leaders call for a ceasefire in the DRC and a power outage delays court cases in Durban. Good morning. East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. The EAC leaders met virtually to focus on the crisis in Eastern Congo. The meeting was chaired by the East African Community Chair and Kenyan President William Ruto. South Africa lost 13 soldiers since the M23 rebels captured the city of Goma. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
In a communique released by the East African community leaders, it appears that DRC President Felix Tshisekedi did not attend the virtual session. The leaders deliberated on the deteriorating situation in eastern DRC, which led to the loss of lives, humanitarian crisis, and suffering of people, especially women and children. The EAC leaders have also expressed concern about the attack of several diplomatic missions in Kinshasa. They called on DRC authorities to protect embassies.
The EFF has criticized the Defense Minister Angie Motshekga for not appearing before the Oversight Committee regarding the deaths of the soldiers in the DRC. EFF MP on Defense Carl Nehaus says the minister is disrespecting Parliament.
This is unacceptable because the minister is part of the executive. The Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans is part of the legislative pillar of government. So we are in the oversight position. We must review the actions of the minister. We cannot be told by the minister that it doesn't suit her to come and account in front of the Portfolio Committee meeting. I objected, other members of the committee objected.
Proceedings at the Durban Magistrates Court have been delayed due to a power outage experienced in various parts of eThekwini. Some areas in the city have been without power since yesterday afternoon. High-profile matters, including the appearance of former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambutla, are scheduled to be heard today. Zuma Sambutla is said to be charged in connection with the July 2021 unrest. Security personnel has prevented people from entering the court building. Free State Public Works Head of Department Musa Masimene has been accused of failing to address fraud, corruption and financial negligence allegations in the department. The Premier's office says Masimene instructed the Office of the State Attorney to withdraw all charges against the Supply Chain Director, Kaya Khadebe, without providing reasons and overlooking the advice from the department's legal team and the State Attorney. In December 2024, Masimene reinstated Khadebe before the charges were officially withdrawn, allegedly without informing the chairperson of the disciplinary hearing. According to the Premier spokesperson, Matshidiso Setai, the previous HOD had charged Khadebe with gross misconduct amounting to 17 million rand.
Premier, from her perspective, as the executive authority charged with the mandate to apply political oversight or executive oversight over MECs and HODs, took the matter upon herself because for her it was an issue of, it's a serious charge of financial misconduct and it's a dismissible offense. So as a result, it cannot be left unattended. And she asked both the MEC and the HOD just to explain to her in terms of why they got the decision they got to in terms of reinstating the official before the matter was concluded, and also going against the advice of the state attorneys.
Meanwhile, Masimene, who's accused of protecting the Director of Supply Chain Management, Kaya Khadebe, has sought to set the record straight. She says there was an arbitration award for Khadebe to be reinstated, but he was placed in a non-existent position.
I then went to our internal legal unit and asked, have you done investigation on this guy? Have you done anything? If this guy comes back, is there anything that will compromise the process with no HOD? We have actually set in the charge sheet. So this guy will not do anything if he gets back to his position. We are paying him as a department. Okay, thank you. Legal, I am happy with what you are saying. I am going to take the guy back on the basis that we were requested to take him back. You have brought him back as a department, and there's nothing that is compromising.
And finally, 3 Israeli hostages are expected to be freed by Hamas later today in the third prisoner exchange between the two sides. 5 Thai nationals will also be released. In return, Israel will release 110 Palestinian prisoners, including 30 women and children. A previous delay in the release of one of the Israelis led Israel last Saturday to temporarily block Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza. The BBC's Imogen Folks has more.
The UN says no one else can do UNRWA's job. With 13,000 staff in Gaza alone, it provides schools, medical care, and is crucially the key distributor of the aid Gaza now so desperately needs. How that can be replaced and by whom is unclear. UNRWA is banned completely inside Israel, and it's illegal for the Israeli authorities who control Gaza and the West Bank to have any contact with UNRWA, making the entry and distribution of aid supplies virtually impossible.
Recapping the top story, the East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Seven after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the show. Coming up in this hour is Municipal Watch, and we'll be focusing on the Makana municipality, unpacking in particular the water crisis that has hit that part of the country. I would say, unfortunately, for several years now it's been ongoing, but we'll touch base to find out where things are. You'd remember residents had largely taken matters into their own hands in trying to have this matter resolved. That's what we'll do in the rest of the hour. Before we get into Municipal Watch, I want to bring some of the voice notes from the open line.
Hi, Cathy. This fiasco in the DRC is a consequence of jobs for pals. This is what you get when you give jobs to pals. Compare the head of the USA military to ours. There's just no comparison. Here's a man who has multiple degrees, who's a qualified military pilot, been through the military academy, eminently qualified to head up the military. So we need to have better leaders in position. And I can say, sadly, that in the old days, you would never have had this situation because the Minister of Defense was always an ex-general. Thanks, Mike and Kabecha.
Good morning, Cathy. Do you think maybe the reason for the SANDF coming across as weak is probably because they have tons of rules and regulations of war, because they're there on a peacekeeping mission. They're not there on a mission to overthrow anyone or any government. They're just there as observers and peacekeeping. And I'm not sure what those rules of engagement exactly are, but I have a feeling they are restricted in that regard.
Good morning, Katie. You're speaking to Ave from Shawela. Cyril Ramaphosa should stop communicating with the nation via letters. And it seems like Jacob Zuma is going to clear him regarding the purchase of military equipment. Thank you. Sakali, South Africa.
Cathy, the country lacks a clear foreign policy. We benefit nothing in the DRC. The country is being used as a proxy for some people. This is your boy Limpopo Peter.
Morning, Cathy. Cathy, I'm not a president's greatest fan, and there are a lot of things that I'm against that he does. But as far as regarding M23 as a militia group, it was because President Paul Kagame all along has been saying that he has nothing to do with M23. Because there were some reports that there were people, Rwandan, that were seen crossing the border to M23 with M23 rebels, to join M23 rebels. Hence, President used the word militia. So Paul Kagame all along has been saying that he has nothing to do with M23. So I think I need to clarify that. So on this, President was not wrong. So, yeah.
Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Well, let's take you then to the very bubbly and artistic town of Makana. This is, of course, home to the National Arts Festival. Yesterday we spoke to the Vice-Chancellor of Rhodes University. It's also where you will find that particular institution. Over the last couple of years, the Makana municipality has been battling very severe water challenges, including water shortages that have led to residents literally coming to day zero, right? Not being able to access water at all. Well, what is the current status of water provision in Makana, and what is the municipality, what are residents doing about it? That's what we're hoping we can get to over the next hour. Let me welcome onto the show Makaya Dungu, is acting for engineering and technical services at the Makana local municipality. Makaya, good morning.
Good morning, and to you and the listeners.
Archbishop Nkosinathi Ngesi is the chairperson of the Makana Concerned Residents Association. Good morning, Archbishop.
Good morning, Cathy, and the whole listeners.
And Jay Kraus is the Director of Public Service Accountability Monitor. Jay, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, fellow panelists and listeners.
Archbishop Ngesi, let me give you a chance to come on first, to perhaps just give us a status update, as it were. Where are we when it comes to water provision in the Makana municipality?
Thank you, Cathy. Currently, you know, we are in a water crisis zone here in Makana. We do get it from time to time, but most of the time, residents do not get it. As I speak now, where I'm living, we just had water only yesterday. And Cathy, what is so frustrating for the residents, which I represent, for instance, the whole lot of December we did not have water. And you will understand and agree with me that it is the time that we need the water the most. It is hot, very hot in this part of the country during December. But there was no water in Makana, in most townships. So this is continuing to go on. But you see, when you drive through the town or walk through the town, you see a lot of leakages. And they have been happening for quite a while now. Actually, it's for years. And nothing seems to be working. We see, for instance, that they are trying to fix all these things, but at the same time, there are no results. You know, the other thing about this water, we are really not sure. When there is no water, they do not provide trucks, alternative trucks. And at some other times, you will get water, but they will send the trucks when we do not need them. So I suspect there is a suspicion that there's also a water mafia going on, but we cannot really point the finger at where really the problem is. it is just the suspicion of the residents here. And for that, Cathy, this has been going on for over a decade now. I'm sure you will bear me out for that one. The last time they said that they ordered a pump in Italy. They said that the pump is in a ship somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, but there was no way that they could solve this. After arrival of the pump, then they said that the new pump that was coming from Italy, it is full of mud. You know, it's a question of Animal Farm by George Orwell, which is happening here. You know, all the pigs are getting stuff, are getting food, they are eating, and all the horses and donkeys, which we represent, we are getting nothing. And Cathy, we have been so patient. I don't think there is any community in South Africa that is patient as the people of Makana. We have tried to go to them, you see, with marches, with negotiations. Nothing seems to work. And I want to conclude by saying, you know, when you deploy people that do not know their jobs, you know, jobs for pals, we get this kind of thing. And we're experiencing it firsthand here in Makana. They do not speak the truth. They do not come to us. They do not explain to us. You will sleep, and when you wake up, there is no water. There is nothing. The taps are dry. It's like here we are on a continuous drought in Makana. When I talk about Makana, I'm also talk about Alisdale and Ripik if there's no water there. So it's a continuous drought for over years. And what is a coincidence, Cathy, is that God has just given us a rain. And we need to appreciate what God is doing for us. But the people that we are paying, because we are paying services for these people to deliver these services, but these services do not come to us. Thank you, Cathy.
Archbishop Ngesi, if we go back to 2020, right, and that would be, almost 5 years ago now, when the Makana municipality, of course, was taken to court over its inability to provide services. And that was a big victory for residents. And one very much got a sense that there could well be a turnaround in terms of the situation because, you know, there was movement to deploy additional resources, to assist even the residents' associations like yourselves that had been long fighting over the issues there. What happened, sort of between then and now, that in 2025, we seem to be back where we were before this matter was in court in the first place?
As I say, we are really in square one. We are not moving at all. We are stagnant with this matter. You will remember, rightly so, the case that you are talking about was lodged by the Unemployed People's Movement. And there was a judgment there that favored that the municipality must be dissolved. This is another matter that you are looking at. And there is nothing that has happened as far as that judgment is concerned. We have called our legal people to assist us, because our wish is that the law must be respected in this country. The moment that a court judgment is issued out and nothing happens, it means there is a problem legally. There's a problem legally, and it's a problem that could grow because some other cities and towns, they will take this as an example that nothing happened in Makanda when the judgment was issued out. We still want to find out, and we want people to assist us, legal minds. Why is the judgment not implemented? Because we want to see this municipality dissolved. We want to have an administrator, and that administrator must not come from Bisho. That administrator must come straight from national. So that is why also, Cathy, we have invited the new minister of COGTA, or Minister Hlabisa. It's unfortunate that he is busy with other priorities of government, but they have promised that they will send people somewhere in March. Whilst we are dying of thirst here, whilst our children cannot go to school, Rhodes University has reopened, the colleges has reopened of education. As you know, Cathy, that Makhanda is a center of education, and the local government is not nursing that. Why are they doing that? Because those people, are incompetent. Incompetent, yes.
All right. Archbishop Ngesi, we're going to pause it there with you. Jay, let me give you a chance perhaps to come in and give us your own perspective. Where have things gone wrong? Why is it that, as the Archbishop has said, we seem to be back to square one in Makhanda?
We have declined. Our track record has become poor, weaker over the last decade. We've gone from being a municipality that had encouraging signs of competence, of functioning, of responsiveness. But in the last 5 years, we've had 5 consecutive disclaimed audit opinions, which points to serious failures at the management level. And that has then further aggravated the state of play. It's not that we lack water. Our supply dams are full. The Fish River scheme, which supplies water as well, has a lot of water. It's the piping, it's the pumping, and it's the management of the infrastructure that is failing us. We've failed as a municipality to spend budgets adequately. And it's a failure at the CFO level, it's a failure at the municipal manager level, and as well as a failure at the oversight level, so at the council level. So we have huge challenges with competence and with proper accountability mechanisms. So, Mr. Dungu, who's come in as the acting director for infrastructure and technical services, faces an uphill challenge. He's new to the post, but we have deep-seated problems that have existed for too long. We've also got a history of that directorate not reporting openly to the municipal manager and to the council. So they've been kept in the dark at times and aren't provided with accurate information. And we have huge frustration amongst residents across town because these problems have deteriorated and have become bigger and bigger. The outages have become more regular. And then we have leaks that then that have existed for months, some have existed for years, and they then often we've seen they compromise electrical cabling, leading to electrical outages. And we also have seen sewage overflows then compromising water supply because it gets into these leaking areas, and then we have E. coli in the water. So there needs to be real consequences at a managerial level. People need to face real consequences, and we need to spend our budgets far better than we have. We shouldn't be sending money back to National Treasury. There needs to be significant turnaround in oversight. So the frustration that Archbishop Ngesi speaks to, and I'm a resident of the town as well and have been for many years, and you see it across suburbs. It's high time it stopped and that we get to the bottom of it and we turn the city around and the neighbouring towns of Riebeek East and Addertale. But back to you.
So how do you as residents survive and deal with this on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So residents who have access to a tank or a drum have to have backup supply. But not all residents have the luxury of a tank. The municipality's backup infrastructure in terms of water bowsers can't reach all residents. So we've had assistance from Gift of the Givers, but we shouldn't have to rely on a backup. We need to stabilize the water supply. There are leaks that have existed in some suburbs for years. I can speak to a number of those, and they are known to the municipality. People report them. People have videos. People complain, but the corrective steps are slow. I think often there are challenges with the availability of new valves, new pipes, new repairing equipment. And that the answers behind that the questions need to be posed to the municipal manager and the chief financial officer. Are you releasing funds to procure that equipment so that the plumbers, the workers on the ground, have the necessary tools to fix these leaks? So we have water, but we're not getting it to residents on a stable supply line because of these challenges. And so residents have to look to back up. They have to either have tanks or walk far distances to collect water if it's available in some pipeline. And that's not progressive. That's not realizing people's rights. That's regressing as a town.
Jay, thank you so much for that perspective. Of course, I was just about to bring in Makaya Dungu, who's acting for engineering and technical services at the Makana local municipality. All right, I understand he's back on air. Mr. Dungu, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Thanks so much.
It's a difficult time for residents in Makana. I imagine that you're not exempt from it as a resident of Makana too?
Yes, certainly. I am also a resident of Makana. I'm not sure whether you would want me then to give my input in terms of the two speakers.
Yes, I'll ask you to get to that in the moment, but speak to me about how you're dealing with some of these challenges on a day-to-day basis.
Look, Cathy, firstly, I must say, I come then from COCTA, which is the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the province, which has seconded me to Makana municipality. And my assumption of duty on terms of the current position is in December. So basically it's 2 months. But I must also then say then that being seconded to by COCTA, it started then from mid-September. So the issues then that have been raised, I can confirm on the issues, especially on issues then of water leaks. It is true, the town has got quite a lot of water leaks. I must also then say then that just to put into perspective, this is a town which is, over 100 years old, and the type of infrastructure, especially water infrastructure, that we're able then to unearth and repair based on terms of the leaks, you could see then that it is quite very, very old. And I think it's an infrastructure which is pipes that are made of asbestos cement, which are quite very, very, I think at a particular point in time of their lifespan, these pipes, just like any other infrastructure, they get them to the end of their design life, and which is then what we are experiencing then in Makana. But I must also then be quick then to say, at the present moment, the municipality is busy with the replacement then of the particular infrastructure. As I speak now at the moment, the town itself and the suburbs around the town, we've issued a notice where we then inform residents then that we are doing what is called tie-ins. Tie-ins then is where we have replaced some of these pipes with the new pipes, and therefore to try and cap obviously the issues then of
so then, Mr. Dungu, over December, as the Archbishop is saying, when there was no water at all that was coming through the pipeline, how were you dealing with it?
Let me probably answer that particular one. December, I was here the entire December. In fact, I even worked, on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, as well as on, on New Year's Day. There has then been what is called intermittent water supply. So in other words, now they will come in at some, point in time, and because we were physically dealing then with the leaks. For starters, the one in December, we had a huge leak, and which I was informed then that, it's probably 5 years it hasn't been like that. Okay? And I can tell you now, the amount of water that we were losing only on the particular leak, estimated to around 3 million liters of water a day. Okay? Now, it took us 2 days where we had then to switch off the water supply in order to deal them with the particular leak.
Mr.
So
Dungu, I'm going to pause you there. We'll continue in a moment. It's 10:30. Time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, Border Management Authority says the Grobler's Bridge post outside Lipalale in Limpopo has been reopened. Operations at the port of entry were suspended due to flooding that caused damage to infrastructure. Son of the former President Jacob Zuma, Duduzane Zuma, says they will continue to rally behind his sister. Duduzile Zuma Sambudla is facing charges linked to the 2021 July civil unrest. And East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 49 to the dollar, 23 rand 04 to the pound, and 19 rand 26 to the euro. Markets in Asia were higher at the closing bell. The JSE mixed in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are trading higher. Gold is trading at $2,769, platinum $955 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $76.52 a barrel.
There will be joy and heartbreak at the Groenkloof Tennis Stadium in Pretoria. South Africa takes on Nigeria. The South is up against the West. This is the Davis Cup World Group 2 tie, the World Cup of tennis. Witness the spectacular tennis battle between South Africa and Nigeria on Saturday 1 February at 11 a.m. and Sunday 2 February at 10:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. You can also catch the Sunday action on SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
All SASA Gold cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3 hash. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. We're focusing on the Makhana municipality today. That municipality bereft with water challenges. In fact, it seems to have been an ongoing water crisis there. Joining us for this conversation, Archbishop Nkosinathi Ngesi is the chairperson of the Makhana Concerned Residents Association. He's alongside Jay Cross, Director of Public Service Accountability Monitor, and Makaya Dungu is acting for engineering and technical services at the Makana local municipality. So, Mr. Dungu, before we went to news, of course, you were outlining some of the challenges when it comes to infrastructure, water leaks, and incredible that, you would have a water leak as significant as what you are describing over the December period. What led to this water leak?
Thanks, Cathy. I think, as I've said, earlier, we've got such a dilapidated infrastructure. And as I've said, the town is over 100 years old. Obviously, that is not an excuse. But I think the level of dilapidation is quite very, very severe. And I think, as a municipality, and since I commenced, the main goal then is to try and reduce those particular leaks. I can even, say in the past, the municipality used them to get water every second day. Okay, and I can then confirm then that currently we wouldn't have, we have an intermittent water supply only during the duration then of a repair job in terms of the water leaks. So certainly I don't deny then, I think the problem then that, existed. But I think I must also then say then that I've then been monitoring, obviously, our reservoirs and as well as, our consumption. And I can confirm then that the municipality is recovering on terms of that. And that
so Mr. Dungu, then explain to Archbishop Ngesi why it is that they didn't have water all of December, if in fact it was a result of the intermittent switching off due to fixing broken infrastructure.
No. To say then that there was no water the whole of December, it is not true. I was here in December. Yes, I can confirm then that there were days where there was no water. I can confirm then that. And in fact, in some instances, it were then hours. And the days where we did not then have water, one of those particular days is the 2 days that I was then mentioning.
Are there areas that you're aware of that are more affected than others? Mr. Ngesi speaks about what the experience of residents in the townships of Makanda are. Are those different to what those in the suburbs would experience, Mr. Dungu?
I think both, I must say then the two areas, which is the suburbs, which is then your western side, they're getting a different water supply from a Vinek water treatment works. And the areas, which is then your township, mostly they're getting obviously water then from another water supply, which is James Lane and water treatment works. On terms of the capacity of the two systems, they can then supply a day around 28 million liters of water per day. Now, the area then on the eastern side, where we've got the townships, the plant itself has recently then been upgraded to 20 million liters of water per day. So what it means, therefore, is that there is no problem then in terms of the capacity then from a bulk or raw water, point of view. But I think the problem then that we're having then is, in fact, our problems then that are relating then to major leaks within then the system, which we are handling at the present moment.
Yeah. So the difficulty, Mr. Dungu, is that, you of course are talking about the interventions that have been brought in and how that should have eased the challenges that residents are experiencing. We have an individual that represents the Residents Association who's saying that has not been their experience.
I must then say then, Cathy, as I've alluded then to, I was here in Makana the entire December. And hence, I dispute then the fact that there was no water the entire December. And that is not true.
Okay, Mr. Ngesi, just hold on, Mr. Dungu. Hold on, Mr. Dungu. Archbishop Ngesi, let me bring you in here.
Yes. Cathy, I'm not sure that he is actually staying in Queenstown, or in Makana, or I'm not even sure that he stays here and see what is happening on day-to-day basis. Unfortunately, people attest to the fact that there was no water in this city. It's unfortunate that Mr. Dungu is saying he started only in December. What date in December? And what was he doing in December when the municipality was closed? Because it was closed at that particular point in time. And secondly, Mr. Dungu, is unfortunate that he has been pushed under the bus because he says that he's just been seconded. And people that are responsible before him, where are they? And where is the municipal manager? Because this thing is very huge. Secondly, if you look at our townships, they are divided into extensions. It is an excuse to say that because of the aging infrastructure, people in the townships cannot get water. There are new townships there, Cathy. They are not even 20 years old, and that they do not get water. And he speaks about aging infrastructure, which is not correct because that infrastructure has just been inserted. So it cannot age just after 20 years. So, yes, the town is 100 or more than 100 years old now. But what are they doing for planning? Because when you go to work, you have to plan as to what program are you going to do for the following day. So instead of them being proactive, they become reactionary. Now they are speaking about the leaks. These leaks have been here for years, and there was no plan for them. And the fact that he's talking about that they are dealing with the leaks, here in town, right in town, there are leaks, and those leaks have been there for quite some time, for years actually. And where are you fixing these leaks, Mr. Dung? So I'm very sorry for you because you are just put under the bus. The responsible people that should have been there to answer to people, it's not you, but it's your bosses, because you are new on the job. And I doubt even if you were here in December for that matter. We had a very bad Christmas in December. No water, number one. Number two, no lights. The streets here are dark. We have been saying this to your principals. We have been saying this to the MECs, but there is nothing at all. I feel sorry for you, Mr. Dungu. Thank you. Thank you, Cathy.
Jay, one, of course, when we think about in any interventions, in a situation like this where residents have these challenges and the municipality is supposed to solve them, there of course has to be some level of acknowledgement of what the full extent of those challenges are. And it is quite concerning to me that you would have residents who's, as you're hearing from Archbishop Ngesi, insistent that they didn't have water all throughout December. It's been intermittent throughout January. But then the municipality saying, no, but that's not what we know. That's not our experience. Yeah. What have you found to be the history of the interactions and the acknowledgement more generally of the true state of affairs when it comes to the problems and the challenges that residents are facing on a day-to-day basis?
I'm as a resident of one of the suburbs, I'm on a suburb WhatsApp group. There are ward WhatsApp groups and wider WhatsApp groups where people will report outages and will provide updates. And on some of those WhatsApp groups, you have councillors present who are then communicating with decision makers in the municipality. And so I have access to a lot of records which point to extended outages. So the question, of course, is what is intermittent? Is it 3 days on and 3 days off? Or is it 7 days off and 2 days on? That's the issue here. I know that in December there were extended periods, numbers of days. Now the issue here is when a severe leak occurs, of course water is lost, and then when the municipality gets to that leak, let's say that the leak occurs on the 15th of December and the municipality gets to starting to work on that leak on the 20th. So 5 days have passed, there's been no water. The municipality then will switch off the water to that area because the staff can't work on a pipe that has water in or is leaking out. They need to switch off, blank off that area and then begin repair work. So the outage is the leaked out period, but then in addition, it's the period when there is repairs being done. Of course, is equipment readily available to fix the repair? Is there a new valve, a new section of pipe? Are the tools and the supplies ready to hand? Do you have to wait a few days for that to arrive? That all then impacts upon the return date of water. And when the water does return after a fix, then what you'll find is residents who are lower lying or who are closer to the water supply, they will pull on the water that is back in the pipelines, and they will look to, if they have a tank, fill it up. There'll be a lot of demand on that supply, and then residents who are further away or higher up, they don't get the access as quickly as residents closer to the supply or lower down. And so that then all impacts upon the definition of intermittent or supply. So I know for a fact that there were parts of town that had weeks without water in December, but that wasn't the first time it happened. It happens regularly across various parts of town. And so if you don't have a tank or an alternative supply, or you don't have the resources to buy water and have it delivered, you're facing serious difficulties there.
Mr. Dungu, so yet another voice that contests what you're saying.
Look, Cathy, firstly, I was the first one then to agree then that there's intermittent water supply. And one of those particular reasons is that
and Jay asked the question, what does that mean? When you talk about intermittent water supply, how many days does that factor in?
I'm coming then to that. When one talks then about intermittent water supply, we're talking then about hours whilst you are busy then dealing then with a leak. But there are certain leaks where it took us 2 days, as I've mentioned, in December. Now, what it meant, therefore, is that during that particular time, we could not supply that particular portion of the area whilst we're working then on the leak. Probably, let me also then probably explain and probably so that then one then can have a clear perspective. When you switch off water supply to work on a leak, firstly, you need then to make sure then that the entire line then gets drained. In other words, you can't. It's very difficult to work on a pipe that has still then has gotten water, and therefore it took its own time. I mean, one particular example, beginning of this month, where we had a burst pipe on the rising main, which is then your pumping main or water supply, and it took 2 days to drain that particular portion of the pipeline. Now, these are issues I'm trying then to put out and to say, yes, there are such instances, and I can't then, I'll be naive then to disagree then with those particular issues. But I must then say then that, Cathy, these are issues that we are dealing then with on a daily basis. Now, when I'm saying on a daily basis...
What is the overall strategy that you're going to be employing as a municipality?
The first strategy that we have then done, firstly, we have then appointed 3 additional plumbers, okay? And we also then have a night shift team when there are problems then in terms of water supply, especially in terms of thirst. We are able then to isolate in that particular area. And I must then say then that those particular plumbers, we have then seen them results to deal them with that. That's one particular area. The second one, Cathy, is that because we've got fragile infrastructure, now your night pressures, so in other words now, when the system is fully pressurized and when you've got fewer people then that are using water, you start then to get quite a number of these particular tests. On average, we've got 3 tests a day That's on average. And most of those social affairs, and we've noted then that they're happening then during early hours of the morning, and that's where then when you've got a frail infrastructure, they get then you normally get into such affairs. So what we are doing then, Cathy, is that we are throttling or we are reducing then the pressures at night. Now, part of that is one of the strategy, and the second one is we've got additional plumbers. The third strategy then is the medium then to long term, where currently at the moment as we speak, there is a contractor that is on site that is replacing the old infrastructure. And thanks then to the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs through the Municipal Infrastructure Grant. And that particular work is happening as we speak at the present moment. And hence I started then by saying, now as you know, your suburbs and around town, the contractor is working there. We've issued out then the communication that to say there wouldn't then be problems then with water supply. So I'm trying then to say these are the issues then that we are dealing then with.
Okay, Mr. Dungu, I'm going to ask you to pause it there. I want to bring in the voice of some of our listeners to this conversation. Mzwandile, you're out in Gqeberha. Good morning.
Yes, morning, Cathy. Listen, I think the question which we must first ask, is this a political problem or is it an administrative problem or challenge or issue? Because this is not limited to Makhanda. I mean, just as the entire Eastern Cape is battling these issues. I come from a town called Venterstad. Now, Venterstad is right on Harib Dam, which is the biggest dam in South Africa. At the whole of December, we didn't have water there. Do you know what the problem was? What is that? Pipe burst. But it's pipe burst because the infrastructure is not maintained. The maintenance of infrastructure is preventative maintenance, which means that if you're using a PVC pipe, for instance, that it might be a 20, a 30, or 40 year type of a pipe. That is the lifespan. So you start your preventative maintenance beforehand. So I think that's what we must first answer. Are these issues administrative or are they political in nature? Secondly, the question I'd like to ask the gentleman there from Makhanda municipalities, have they costed the cost of overhauling all of their infrastructure? And if so, do they have the budget, number one, and are they actively implementing that? So if the budget is 100 million and they say the only budget we get per year is 20 million, that would mean that the people of Makhanda must endure this for the next 5 years. So I'd like him to answer that question. Have they costed it? What is their budget in relation to that? Then the last question is, and I want to ask your broader panelists, is there room, you can even ask your gentleman there from Makhanda, is there room for the Ratepayers Association to also partner with the municipality to address these issues? Because in some cases, you actually find that you've got well-equipped people within the municipality, including construction companies that are willing to volunteer their service just so that they don't sit without water. But where the bottlenecks are is that municipality which is not wanting to adopt such services which are rendered free of charge by the citizens because they want to address this issue. So let's also see, is there room for the private sector to intervene and to assist? And the reason I'm raising that, Cathy, I work in the water sector. There's an area just outside of Makhanda, but it's on the next district called Chief Irrigation, and it's surrounded by villages. Those villages used to have water treatment work that worked in the 80s and 90s. But since 2019 till now, those water treatment works collapsed. And as a result, all of the people along that river belt, so the water's there. All they need is just the water treatment works with the necessary infrastructure to recirculate the water. Is none working.
All right.
And the private sector stepped in and said, guys, we are willing to do this for you free of charge. But then what do you get? You get municipalities which are in opposition of us assisting because it would have a political ramification for them.
Okay, Mzwandile, very important input coming from you today. There is no shortage of experts, perhaps, who can assist the municipality in some of these challenges.
Good morning, Kate. Katie,
I'm a resident of Makanda. Here in Makanda, every street here in Vukan is leaking. It's leaking. In front of my house, there is a storage. It's more than 30 years that storage is there. It's a storage still. So here in Makanda, nothing happened. There's no government. There's ornaments. Those people. They don't know even any work. They do things wrong.
My name is Cathy. I just felt it was Bishop. I can't wait for Bishop to finish what he's narrating to you about Ikheni or Makana, whatever it's called. There is no Maspala there. There is no Maspala Payasiskin. There is no Maspala Yo. Not sure if they have a heart about officials. It's been long going on, this thing. Yasekheni. And it's imagine Bishop is telling the truth when he says it's hot in that particular area. In that area of Ikheni, it's very, very hot. And now people are sitting with no water. Sis.
Municipal Watch, bringing your local issues on the national agenda. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
So you heard then some of the reflections from our listeners also contributing to this conversation. Archbishop Ngesi, to round off this conversation, what would you want to see the municipality do differently? Mr. Dungu is going to be running with that. What are your expectations of him?
Thank you. Kevin, let me just comment about the last speaker. He's correct. He is correct, that speaker from Kabeja. We have people here with expertise. We have plumbers. We have actually engineers here that the municipality doesn't want them to work. They just close the doors for every person that wants to assist and help, and yet they know that they have no expertise for this. Coming to your question, or before I come to your question, Kathy, something is related that is eating me up, is the question of 6,000 unaccounted givers. Givers is related to water as well. Those givers have been donated by the Department of Minerals and Energy, and to put for the poor people. Those givers, the community have not received them. It's 5 years now. It's quiet. Nothing is happening, and you want them to account about those givers as well. My last comment will be that for Mr. Dungu, I understand that you have put in some plumbers, but we have engineers. It's not only the plumbers that we want. We want the engineers in terms of making this town fresh again. Okay. Also, we want professional people. Please stop abusing us. Stop abusing our money. That is why we are hungry. You return the money to the treasury because you do not use that money that is meant for development. The money goes to salaries, and it cannot be right.
Okay, Archbishop Ngesi, let's leave it there. Jay, your expectations of Mr. Dungu in this new role?
Well, certainly I'd like to see regular updates, progress reports being made publicly available, and that the council and the municipal manager are also kept in the loop. I wish Mr. Dungu well in his new role and responsibilities. I'd like to see additional funding directed to fixing these problems, but I think it needs the assistance of the district municipality and the provincial COGTA department, because we've seen with the audit track record of Makana that they can't account for funds properly. So we need support from outside as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Dungu, then I'll give you the last word. You heard the expectation of the residents. What is your commitment to them in terms of how you are going to be managing these challenges around water?
Thanks, Cathy. Cathy, let me probably then first and start then by saying water and sanitation, the National Department, as part of the intervention, it has upgraded the water treatment works, James Clement. So basically, that is now doubled in terms of the supply. And that particular project then it also then added additional clear water pumps as part of that particular project. So it's part of the intervention. And I think the second one is what I've said, I think, earlier, cooperative governance and traditional affairs. The fact that I am here, this particular municipality, there's no, it is now in the process, obviously, of appointing the director of technical services. So there is no technical services. So it was one of the interventions then that COCTA has then, done. Now, the other issues, Cathy, is that, look, this is not, okay, I think the question then was, have we done then the costing? We've done then the costing, but I'm currently now reviewing then the actual figures. But based on the current funding then that we are getting at the moment, it will then take us around about 20 years to fix every problem. That is then in terms of now replacing then the old infrastructure. So we are now back on terms of now the strategy then on terms of reducing the leaks and repairing them, and as well as obviously minimizing then your pressures then at night.
All right. Mr. Dungu, reality is that the expectations are high, and one, of course, takes into account the fact that you're still new in the role. In 6 months' time, hopefully, we'll be having a very different conversation to what we did today. It's 11 o'clock, time for your latest news update.
In our top stories, deadline looms for late school applications and Trump plans for a mass deportation facility. Good morning. Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona is urging parents and guardians who have not yet found placement for their children to make use of satellite schools in the province. This as today marks the deadline for school late applications. Many schools in the province are already full, leaving some children without placement. Mabona has emphasized that parents must apply today before applications close.
Because most of the parents that applied late, definitely some of them, they could not find schools, but because they then wanted space, they just click a school that will pop up. So we are assisting those now just to bring them close, but our schools are full. We are highly pressured in Gauteng. That's why we are introducing satellite schools, which are assisting us daily, and we just want to call upon parents to embrace satellite schools, because we are introducing those schools to assist them and to make sure that our process, moves smoothly.
The son of former President Jacob Zuma, Duduzane Zuma, says they will continue to rally behind his sister, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, who's facing charges linked to the 2021 July civil unrest. Zuma Sambudla is appearing in the Durban Magistrates Court this morning. She's charged under the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act and incitement to commit violence. Duduzane says his sister handed herself over at the Durban Central Police Station.
I'll say those are the charges, and that's why we're here. We're going to see if the charges hold or not, and that's what this is about. We appreciate the work that, the NPA, the Hawks, SATs do. But on the other hand, there are people that are also, the human beings that need to be treated accordingly. So we'll see who wins at the end of the day. I'm confident, quietly so. But, this isn't a necessary step, and we'll take it as it comes. And, to all the people doing the good work in our justice system, keep up the good work. And to those who are persecuting some of us, take it easy. The more you do it, the less credible you become. So be careful. Thank you.
The bail application of 12 men accused of hacking to death 5 people in Inanda, north of Durban, continues in the Ntuzuma Magistrates Court. The accused are facing charges of kidnapping, murder and attempted murder. 2 weeks ago, 5 men were found dead at a sports field at Bambai settlement. The bail hearing began yesterday. 5 of the accused filed affidavits denying any involvement in the murders. Outside the court, community members are picketing, calling for the accused to be released. East African community leaders have called on all parties involved in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo to cease hostilities and facilitate humanitarian access to the affected population. The EAC leaders met virtually to focus on the crisis in Eastern Congo. The meeting was chaired by the East African Community Chair and Kenyan President William Ruto. South Africa lost 13 soldiers since the M23 rebels captured the city of Goma. Kaili Kumalo has more.
In a communique released by the East African community leaders, it appears that DRC President Felix Tshisekedi did not attend the virtual session. The leaders deliberated on the deteriorating situation in eastern DRC, which led to the loss of lives, humanitarian crisis, and suffering of people, especially women and children. The EAC leaders have also expressed concern about the attack of several diplomatic missions in Kinshasa. They called on DRC authorities to protect embassies.
And finally, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will sign an executive order to set up a detention facility for illegal immigrants at the United States high security Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. Trump says the facility could host up to 30,000 people. Cuba's president has called the decision an act of brutality perpetrated in an illegal occupied territory. Trump says this is the best way to deal with illegality.
We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And this is a tough place to get out of.
Recapping the top story, Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona is urging parents and guardians who have not yet found placement for their children to make use of satellite schools in the province. This as today marks the deadline for late school applications. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SABC CSI, in partnership with SAFM, will be giving away 20 laptops to Tetlanyo Secondary School in Kimberley on the 31st of January 2025. Tetlanyo Secondary School has been nominated by the SABC to receive 20 laptops after writing a donation request to enhance their ambitions to be 4IR compliant and increase the number of learners ready to participate fully and productively in the country's economy. Tune in to SAFM on the 31st of January and listen to The Talking Point, broadcasting live from the Tetlanyo Secondary School. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Talking Point on SAFM, weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the third and final hour of the show. It's 8 after 11 o'clock. A pleasure to have you with us as we continue to lead conversations that move us. So for the final conversation of this morning, we're going to be speaking to the Director of Research at MISTRA, the new Head of Research there, Dr. Sandy Africa. It's only the end of January, at least tomorrow being the official last day of the month. But what a whirlwind it has been in as far as international developments are concerned, right? If we look at some of the conflicts that are taking place in different parts of the world, you come to the continent, the DRC conflict that has, of course, also been dominating our own headlines. All of these matters that speak to governance, issues of security, of national intelligence, but also political security strategies. Now, our next guest has worked in the field of developing national security policies in transitional democracies for decades. She's an academic with interests in international relations, public policy and security studies. She's also trained government officials in South Africa and on the continent. You'd also remember the name Sandy Africa from that infamous report out of the July 2021 riots to the presidency in terms of what led to the outbreak of that violence and the way in which it unfolded. Well, to talk about not only her new role as the head of research at MISTRA, but also looking at the role of transdisciplinary research in national policy making, particularly in shifting geopolitical times. Dr. Sandy Africa, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Also a pleasure to be on this show. It's also really early in my time at MISTRA, and for those listeners who may not be aware of this institute, MISTRA stands for the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. It's a think tank in the South African space looking at the broad geopolitical but also governance challenges facing South Africa and the world.
These are very interesting times that we are living in, Dr. Africa, geopolitically. And I suppose compounded by the fact that we have the U.S. President Donald Trump as the 47th president of the U.S., making it clear that he, in his second term in office, is not going to be playing by the rule book. He's going to be shifting things up. Already the world has started to feel the impact of that. Your own, perhaps, description of how you would describe this moment that we are in globally, and perhaps then bring it back down to South Africa.
Cathy, a time of uncertainty, a time of complexity, but also a time of great opportunity. I see myself as an optimist in the sense that very often in the midst of a crisis, there's the opportunity to do things better and differently. And perhaps the change in administration in the US is signaling one of those moments. That said, with Trump having been the 45th and 47th president of the USA, I do think that we, and MISTRA prides itself in its capabilities in this regard, ought to look at the longue durée, look at the trends that this repeat of his return or his being in power suggests. And there are definitely a number of international political trends, there are a number of economic trends, there are a number of environmental trends, there are a number of technological trends which have been unfolding over time. And when it comes to the international, I'd say that what's characterizing the moment is a sense of vast inequality and a frustration both within and between nations that this is persisting in spite of challenges at all sorts of levels, and people are finding ways to express their frustrations around these. And unfortunately, rhetoric plays a huge role in feeding the political choices and decisions that are made. And I suppose some of the electoral choices that are being made globally with shifts to the right in electoral politics is just emblematic of this.
Is that concerning, the fact that there is so much rhetoric which moves beyond just the realm of speak and perhaps pandering to particular interests, to then informing decisions around how countries are behaving? surely that is something that would and should worry us.
It certainly should worry us. Cathy, there are those who actually question the constitution and the composition of the rules-based international order, as it is sometimes referred to. And this is the post-World War II pacting, and in a sense, even the agreements, perhaps between elites that followed the end of the so-called Cold War. However, it's important to realize that those arrangements have played an important role in creating some semblance of order. And when you find that people in power, people in positions of authority question and undermine those instruments, then there's very little hope that stability and the conditions for development are going to be maintained. So we do need to look at what this kind of rhetoric means for an inclusive and peaceful and stable international order, regional order, as well as when you bring it down to the rule of law, what it means for the rule of law within our different countries.
What would you say is the role between inequality and security and stability? Again, in the context of some of the comments that you have made, that there is this angst globally around the high levels of inequality. And the reality is that people are, by and large, expressing a view that they don't want the status quo because it has not delivered according to expectation. Even democracy itself has taken a knock because people the world over have not necessarily reaped the democratic dividend, at least in as far as what the fruits of democracy, by and large, are supposed to be, just beyond the power of the vote.
Indeed, Cathy. What we are seeing is, in fact, people losing faith in the promises of electoral reform, the promises of democratic institutions, because these reforms, because the governance which follows on from the institution of these reforms, in many cases, in the institution of elected government, actually fails to deliver. So people make the connection that I go to the voting station, I vote, and my life doesn't change in 5 years. And this is what makes the option of the big, strong man, and they usually are men, so much more attractive. We see it on our own continent, where after years of failed missions at the level of the UN, I'm sorry to say, populations in Mali, for example, and in context of not necessarily UN missions, but the role of the international community in supporting or failing support to support real change. We see populations in Niger, in Burkina Faso, actually saying, and this is particularly among young people, that, well, we don't mind being under military rule if it's going to bring about change in our lives. So, for example, the recent withdrawal of the states of Mali, the juntas of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, is a very worrying sign, because it really does signal that on the back of what these I would say self-appointed leaders interpret their populations to be saying, we see a further erosion of multilateralism, of platforms where common problems can be addressed.
And isn't that the elephant in the room when we look at the shifting geopolitical landscape? Doesn't it point us to questions around the failures of multilateralism? that the approach to managing conflict has simply not succeeded in the way that it should have in the last couple of decades. And of course, one can even point to what we're seeing happening in the DRC and the conversation that South Africans have been raising as a case in point.
Yes and no. I would not say that multilateralism as a way of resolving problems is a failed tool in the basket of options for statehood and resolving problems. What I would say is that multilateralism, as it's practiced, has got many flaws and weaknesses which ought to be addressed. And governments like the South African government have pointed out, for example, that you need reform of the United Nations and in particular its Security Council, so that it's not only the big powers, those who are nuclear weapon bearing, for example, who have a say at the table, but that's all. The United Nations is a platform for all nations, so all should be able to have a say without it being vetoed. And then at the level of the regions, I can speak, I suppose, about the African region, and I am sure that there are reflections on how effective the regional instruments are in other parts of the world. But I must say that the AU, it is I don't know if we can still call it, having been formed in 2002, and really its precursor having been formed in 1963. I don't know if we can still afford to call it a young organization, but certainly it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of its resourcing, its resolve, the political cohesion that exists among the leaders, and the way in which it actually creates the conditions or helps to create the conditions for the aspirations of people of the continent to be realized. So multilateralism is not a failed instrument. I think it's rather that the way it is practiced and how the governance structures are currently performing that is at fault.
If we look at the drivers of conflict, right, and what ultimately leads to security crises that we see unfolding again in different parts of the conflict, what would you say that we need to be paying more attention to in terms of understanding the drivers of these conflicts? Because the reality is, Dr. Africa, we're dealing with in conflict situation, conflicts that have been going on for decades and decades. And on one level, it boggles the mind why it is that we're simply not able to bring an end to these conflicts, despite the commitment, whether it's regional bodies, whether it's the AU, whether it's the UN, interventions, again, of over decades, bringing in different types of reforms. But it's all not yielding to the results that people say they're looking for, which is peace in the end.
Indeed, ordinary people want peace, and we are seeing, in fact, that the globe is becoming a more uncertain, volatile place. So clearly, something is giving. The conditions that may have existed in certain environments is actually are regressing, and as you say, conflicts and armed conflicts particularly are simply being perpetuated in other spheres. The drivers, I think all the listeners know that these are indeed very complex. On the one hand, the fact that there are differences which aren't resolved, and which then escalate and then involve others who forge relationships or alliances. The fact that there's very little political resolve around the actual decisions that are sometimes taken at the high table, because there's no point in sitting around a table and taking a decision if the mechanisms to enforce these decisions are not effectively in place. So diplomacy has to be complemented by other instruments, and these may stretch from the one hand to the injection of economic incentives if a conflict has actually reached that point where people are going to elections and they now have the voice at the ballot. But people don't eat ballots. You know, they want jobs, they want security, they want housing, they want health. And if they feel neglected, then they are going to actually see the resort to violence as an option for them to be heard. And one always can bring this back to the South African context, where we've often heard the phrase, the smoke that talks. People who feel deprived of services arguing that it's only when we actually make it clear to the authorities that, you know, we aren't being heard, and they do this by perhaps something that steps over the line, actions that step over the line, that there's a response. At least that's the perception of people. So underlying causes, very important, political will, as well as the kind of a pressure, diplomatic pressure. And actually, if you say you're going to sanction a state for behaving badly, then that ought to happen. But there's also a sense in which the international community, when it comes to these internationalized conflicts, and many have referred to the DRC. You mentioned the DRC earlier in our discussion, have referred to it as Africa's Great War, and that is because it has drawn in so many players.
If we look at our ability, Dr. Africa, to solve problems, and problems necessarily around conflict, what is the moment that you think we have sort of stepped into? One gets the sense that messaging from certain countries right now, of course, the US, very protectionist, very put America first. And there'll, of course, be questions around how that kind of messaging is going to resonate the world over, and what then kind of consequences will it conjure up. Are we moving to a moment where the problem solving is not necessarily going to be multilateral based, but it's going to be every country for themselves, and so it's national interest first, perhaps in a way that multilateralism has created a veil around, because there has been that common interest and the need to promote a common interest?
Complex question, Cathy, because yes, one did refer to the traditional instruments of multilateralism, and I do think that it's important to support the ongoing efforts to reform them. But at the same time, I think we should all be aware that, the world is not the same as it was in 1945, neither is it the same as it was in 1990, after the collapse of the Berlin Wall and end of the Cold War, the superpower rivalry. It's not the same as it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And what's happened in the last decade have been some interesting shifts where countries have started to redefine their own interests, meet and find each other in common forums outside of these bodies, which do remain supreme. And that's why it's so important for them to be strengthened. The UN Security Council must be reformed. But at the same time, strengthening the regional and sub-regional bodies, strengthening alliances such as the BRICS, working through other forums, are all very important. But this is all in the realm of statehood. If we were to rely simply on states, we would be really doing ourselves a disservice, because it's equally important for people across the globe to find themselves in different contexts. So, the labor movement needs to be talking to each other through international federations. Educators and higher education people need to be strengthening scientific diplomacy across the globe and putting pressure on their states. And let's remember that, whilst we look to our executives to implement, because they constitute the governments that are formed after our elections, our states are more complex. They consist of, in our case at least, we have, three arms of the state. There's parliament, there's the executive, there's the judiciary. They are independent institutions. At the same time, there are different tiers of government, from the national to the provincial to the local. And even outside of these, there are stakeholders and interest groups which ought to be holding all of these to account. So I think it's actually a moment in which we can all be rethinking the way in which we think about governance, and how we can reshape governance so that it meets our interests.
All right.
And that's the moment I think we're in.
Dr. Africa, I'm going to ask you to pause it there. We'll continue the conversation with her shortly. Let's take you to the latest news headlines.
With the headlines at 11:30, I am Dineo Mutaung. Good morning. Former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, is appearing at the Durban's Magistrates Court this morning. Zuma Sambudla has been charged under the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act and incitement to commit violence relating to the 2021 July unrest. In other news, Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabona is urging parents and guardians who have not yet found placement for their children to make use of satellite schools in the province. And U.S. President Donald Trump says he will sign an executive order to set up a detention facility for illegal immigrants at the United States high security Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Toffees are well aware that only maximum points will help them out of the bottom half.
Lewin, great feat, brilliance, absolutely superbly done. Calvert-Lewin for Everton.
Meanwhile, the Foxes believe they are in dire need of victory to run away from trouble.
It's Jordan Ayew, back to goal. Jordan Ayew has scored for Leicester City, and those Leicester fans are celebrating wildly.
This is the Premier League. Experience the superb contest, Everton FC versus Leicester City FC, on Saturday 1 February at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mweketi.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy. Tacitus, the Roman historian, once said, and I quote, "Long I pray, May foreign nations persist in hating one another, and fortune can bestow on us no better gift than discord among our foes. Close quote. So the foreign policy of the West towards Africa during colonial times and post-colonial times has always been divide and conquer. They take advantage of the ethnic differences and religious differences within the third world and use that to their advantage. And this is why you had a genocide in Uganda, a genocide in Rwanda, a genocide in Kenya, a genocide in Zimbabwe, a civil war in Mozambique. And unless we have patriotic leaders and not sellouts, this continent will not develop. Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Morning, Cathy. My views to your guest in studio regarding, the Trump. I would say Trump is spot on. He has proven himself beyond a shadow of a doubt, especially in this term, that he is for the people. He's against the globalists, this guys that are pushing a new world order, the guys that are pushing one world government, that are pushing, pandemics of some sorts. All these guys. So yeah, Trump is spot on, and big up to him, especially for his stance on immigration.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
Those are just some of the reflections from our listeners on this conversation. My guest this morning, Dr. Sandy Africa, Director of Research at MISTRA, were talking about then the role of transdisciplinary research in national policy making, particularly during these very complex geopolitical times. And perhaps that is a good point for us to venture into, Dr. Africa. We've touched on the complexities and what makes, some of the conflicts we're currently dealing with in 2025, to be more specific, so complex. But what then does this mean for researchers such as yourselves, and the work ultimately that you do, that will inform the policies of whether it's national governments, whether it's these institutions, whether it's other think tanks who are thinking and constantly re-looking at how to shape not only the conversation but policy to be in line with the problems of the day?
Thank you, Cathy, and thank you to the listeners for those reflections. I think that we all have, we're all trying to make sense of the world, and I think that both looking back at history, as your one caller has done, as well as trying to make sense making, which is what we researchers do, of how we understand the interventions made by particular leaders. We may disagree, but I've always been so impressed that South African audiences and listeners that come onto the public broadcaster are really reflecting deeply on these issues. But what does all of this mean for the researchers who are trying to assist? And we don't only assist governments but also civil society. We try to make our voices heard through evidence-based engagement, and different think tanks have different focuses, so they'll do this in different ways. But for MISTRA, I'd say that we're trying to contribute in 4 different ways. One is our research is centered on preparing for the future. We have a number of tools where we look at long-term futures. Some may have heard about the Indlulaniti scenarios. That is a tool that we use to try to imagine what South Africa would look like in the year 2035 if different variables were to shift. But there's no point. When I tell people that at the AU, our continent has an Agenda 2063, there are some who are appreciative, but there are others who roll their eyes and say, who's going to be alive in 2063? The point being that whilst we're looking and preparing for the future, we need to understand state and society now. And so a lot of our research actually goes into that type of analysis, the burning questions, be it the just climate transition, the evolving state of the economy, the education sphere and its challenges, and plugging into debates around race and identity and all sorts of issues that are burning issues in the South African context. The third area that we try to basically reflect on and make a contribution to is in science and innovation. And we're lucky that on our staff we have economists, we have biologists and chemists. So many think tanks traditionally would have the political scientists and the social scientists, but we're lucky in which we have a very diverse staffing complement. And so these are just some of the areas that we think that we can contribute around, and we do this by these long-term scenarios. We do this by what we call our priority research projects, but we also are finding that many companies, many civil society organizations, many NGOs are approaching us to help them with the burning questions they are addressing, which are of strategic nature in their context. And we do this through commissioned work that we help to define the questions and apply our resources to answering.
In preparation then for the future and what the future could potentially look like, Dr. Africa, I want you to take a country like South Africa. If you look at our policy approach, especially when it comes to managing our foreign affairs and what our foreign policy is, how do you see that evolving over the years? And perhaps you can even talk about how you believe it has or has not evolved to this moment that we are in today. Again, the conflicts that are unfolding and that have unfolded globally seem to be pushing countries into a position where neutrality is, yes, could well be something that is spoken about, but it seems to be pushing countries out of a position of neutrality that actually, there's going to come a point where people pick sides. And what should our approach be?
This is such an important question, and in a way, it talks to how think tanks define themselves. I know that you're not asking about how MISTRA defines what the future would look at, but you're asking for my views on how we should be thinking about our future international relations. We, in this protectionist, as you say, fragmented, and some would say anti-globalist, driven environment, there are nevertheless other streams that we ought to highlight through our research. There are streams of solidarity, of Pan-Africanism, of resolving problems of inequality. And I think it is those that we can actually, as researchers, lend our voices and our skills to helping to actualize. So you'd know, for example, that MISTRA over the past year has been looking at the conflict in the Middle East, and in particular the way in which it has impacted on the people of Palestine. And so, we've been, in a sense, hopefully contributing to how our audiences understand what is happening there. Not taking sides, not saying who's right or wrong, but simply actually trying to give a sense of what the options are. Similarly with Syria, how do we understand the dynamics? What are the geopolitical consequences of a shift in governance, or the way in which that conflict has been resolved? So yes, on the one hand, there are these major forces, but the role of research is then, through choosing appropriate questions, to actually look at what is likely to unfold. And we would very much like to see government, certainly as MISTRA, partnering with us much more. We do have some partnerships, but we'd like to see more partnerships with different government departments in helping to understand and complementing their respective capacities. I must not say that government has no capacity, but complementing their capacities so that we can actually put on the table policy options for the country and for the continent that they can consider. And in that respect, I'm very pleased that we have been approached, for example, to play some supportive role. I can't really give too much detail because we are still at early stages of discussing that, but to play some supportive role in relation to the many different work streams that are leading up to the G20. So those are just some elements of our contribution, but always trying to maintain an arm's length and not being influenced or pressured into to researching questions or even arriving at answers that we feel are not scientifically valid. Thank you.
So when you then think about, again, the moment that we are in as a country, and perhaps even stretching it out to the continent, do you think we're going to wake up to a more peaceful world in 2030? I mean, I don't even want to think about agenda, the silencing the guns, mandate of the African Union, Agenda 63. But do you think that the world and just the region that we're in is going to be more peaceful, given where we are now in this moment?
Well, 2030 is not very far away. It's 5 years away. And if we are to shift the needle, then there's much work to be done. The challenge is to ensure that the resources are there, that the necessary evaluations are made of where we are. I was listening to the radio earlier, and I realized that many people don't necessarily understand the nature of South Africa's role, for example, in resolving some of the conflicts. The one that has featured in your show and earlier today on the earlier shows has been the conflict in the DRC, the appreciation that South Africa is part of two mandates of the UN, one being MONUSCO, the other the Force Intervention Brigade under the auspices of SADC. These must be reevaluated all the time. The Force Intervention Brigade was very successful in executing what it was mandated to do in 2013, which was to disarm and neutralize the rebels. But we're facing a completely different context. And so the SADC, when it does meet, the AU really needs to take a very hard look at what is needed. And I'm not sure if our review processes on the continent are as rigorous and as persistent as they should be, whether the resources are being brought to bear. But Cathy, at the end of the day, it really does boil down to diplomatic effort. Yes, in the short term, as we saw in 2013, when there was, a kind of neutralizing of the conflict, and again, successively. But unless the parties to the conflict actually come to some agreement, and these should not be elite-led pacts, and this is why in the discourse there's so much talk about the role that civil society can play, the role that mediators could play, why the AU is training women mediators, for example. All of these efforts at the end of the day are going to be necessary for us to quell the conflicts where they exist. But like you say, it's a relatively open field and it may require very different and innovative solutions to the ones which are clearly not working now.
Dr. Sandy Africa, let me thank you for your time this morning. She is the Director of Research at Mistra, recently coming into that position. So somebody that we'll be hearing a lot more of as they continue the work that they do at that particular organization. That's where we leave it for today on The Talking Point. The show back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Have yourselves a lovely afternoon. Up next, the book reading.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SFM presents another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me by Kaya Dlang, read by Lerato Mvelase.
The Sister I Met Once continues. No answer again. There was a slight relief I wouldn't have to deal with this today. I knocked for a final time. This time, a loud, irritable, sleepy, and drunk voice responded. Aye, Diege, Amba! Hey, leave me, go! I did not need to be told twice. I turned and walked away as fast as possible. But just before I opened the gate, I heard a young woman's voice shout to me, Molo, hello? I turned to look. For the first time, I noticed that there were back rooms, some 4 or 5 meters away from the main house. The door of one of the back rooms was open. This woman looked like she had just woken up as well. She walked towards me, and I towards her. There was recognition in her eyes as I approached her. She was shaking her hands as if getting rid of excess water. Ungubani? Unguputi? Who are you? Are you my brother? The shape of her face reminded me of both my sister, Sigi, and my grandmother. The closer she got, the more I knew she was my sister. Her eyes were Sigi's eyes. They were very light brown, almost hazel. Her hair was not completely black, just like my Sigi's. She had Sigi's complexion too. They both got those features from Mambele, our grandmother. There was no way of denying the DNA. It did not need to be examined under some microscope. It was apparent. Ndingukaya, I said and paused. Then I realized I had to say more. Dlanga, Kaya Dlanga. I said it like James Bond, but without confidence. She continued to rid her hands of the imaginary water. She asked, Ungunyana ka Tobile? Are you Tobile's son? Zandisile Dlanga. She knew my father as Tobile. Everyone from back home knew him as Zandisile. You're my brother, she said, shaking. She embraced me with her whole being. I didn't quite know how to receive her. I was still an awkward hugger. And we had just met. I had also heard many theories from relatives and villagers about the murder of my father. His killers were never found. We started talking outside. I called Jabu to come over and introduce them. She looks like your sister, Seki, Jabu said. I now remember that she never invited us inside the house. She stood outside the whole time. She told me that her grandmother had passed on many years ago, and the shebeen had long stopped operating. Her mother was married and had left her to live with her uncle. A part of me could tell that she was not living in great conditions. She told me that she had an 11-year-old daughter who lived with her mother. She asked me where I lived. Fourways, I said. Fourways, wow, she exclaimed in excitement. We will come visit every weekend, she said, and started telling me how she would spend her weekends there. I suddenly had red flags. This is not what I bargained for. I was clearly unprepared for this. All I expected was to meet her and know each other and then take things slowly from there. Everything just seemed to be overtaking me at that point. You must see my daughter. She lives with my mother around the corner. We got in Jabu's car and went around the corner, which ended up being some 20 minutes away. We finally got around the very far around corner. She got out of the car and came back with her daughter, a shy 11-year-old child who did not live with her own mother. A part of me sensed that she was better off living with her grandmother. The conditions were much better with her grandmother, at least from appearances. Bulisa umalume wako. Greet your uncle. I greeted the shy child and made small talk. She was holding on to the mother shyly, wondering, I imagined, why these grown-ups were wasting her time. Again, we were not invited inside, but stood chatting outside. I found it unusual. I figured that was how things were done in Johannesburg. Maybe people didn't trust each other because they might steal. I don't know. I eventually made an excuse about needing to leave, and that's when she said to her daughter, "Cela imali kumalume. Ask your uncle for money." I gave her some money, knowing that the money was not for the daughter but for her. She was asking for herself. I left, and I was both happy to have met her and unsure at the same time. I felt guilty for not being sure. But my lack of certainty about my sister would be exacerbated over time. At first, I did not mind giving her money, but over time I began to realize that that was all I was to her, an ATM. The requests for money were persistent, frequent, and she would use really harsh language. She would then apologize, but the cycle would just repeat itself. I felt trapped. She was my sister, but I was losing patience. I began to ask myself if she needed help and if I would be abandoning her. Was I a horrible human being? I had my siblings back home to take care of. I also had my mother to take care of. My other siblings were all still students, and I was the only person who was working. My money went to them and towards feeding, clothing, and getting me to work. Her mom lived in a pretty decent home. Why wasn't she asking her for money? Was her mom also tired of her? Was I being judgmental? I kept questioning myself and the situation. I called my mother after a few months and told her that I had met my sister. She was devastated. "Why would you do that? The reason your father died is because he went to that place. He went to them." I eventually had an idea. I thought that if I gave the sister my uncle's number, he was in Johannesburg as well, she would leave me alone. I gave her Avukile Dlanga's number, and I stopped answering her calls. A slew of angry SMSs with the most unbelievable insults started to come through. I was mildly impressed by how creative she was in her use of language. Samuel L. Jackson would have been impressed. After a few months, she stopped sending me text. I don't know if she had lost her phone or what. My uncle called me months later, telling me that all she ever wants is his money and gets angry when he doesn't have any. I once opened up in an interview on radio about her, and I was asked if I regret the decision to cut her off like that. I said no. I do feel guilty, but I would still make the same decision. A heartbreakingly cold moment between a father and son. My younger brother, Nganga Dlanga, had gone to the bush to be circumcised without telling anybody, and I was incredibly irritated. He was 16 and hadn't even completed his matric. I was aware that he must have felt under pressure to go to the bush because other boys his age were going. But I was the least pleased human being when my mother called me to tell me that Nganga had vanished and gone to be circumcised without letting anyone know or getting permission from his family. Uzbile, directly translated, this means to steal yourself. This is not an uncommon practice. Often boys realize that all their friends are going to the bush and want to go too. After the ritual, you're supposed to leave your boyish ways behind, including your uncircumcised friends, who are still considered boys. Nganga was young for his grade at school, so he had older friends, and was probably worried that they wouldn't hang out with him anymore once they come back from the bush as men. Send him a message and let him know he's going to be staying there for a long time. I'm not sending money for him to have his ceremony, so he will stay there until I'm not mad at him, I said to my mother. She said, "Xolela umntana khaya lethu. Forgive the child, Kaya Letu. I mean it. He's not getting anything from me. It's irresponsible." My mother could see my mind was not going to be changed. 3 weeks went by, and I was still not going to send the money for Umgidi, a traditional ceremony to welcome initiates back to the community after they have been circumcised. That month, I sent money home for my mother as I usually did, but no extra money. To keep up with tradition, she decided to get in touch with Nganga's dad, Tununu, so that he can pay for his ceremony. Many years had gone by, and he had not raised a finger to help Sigu and Nganga. I was the sole breadwinner. You did not look after or raise these kids. The least you can do is pay for his traditional ceremony. Be a man for once, man. My mother told me she scolded him until he was too ashamed not to pay up. Arrogantly, I had thought that Nganga would stay in the bush for another week or two without my money. I wanted him to stay there by himself as punishment before I would release any money to my mother. But out of nowhere, my mother told me she had the money and that preparations for Umgidi were in place. I missed the ceremony because I had commitments at work. When I eventually made it home to Mdatsane a week later, Nganga was home and dressed as Ikwala, a recent initiate. I gave him a good, strong talking to about his behavior. I had been 18 and had already completed matric when I went to circumcision school. Unlike him.
That was another episode of the book These Things Really Do Happen to Me, written by Kaya Dlanga, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase, technical production Wiseman Mangele, Nanda Khoza, and Tato Mapurum.
12 o'clock on Thursday, the 30th of January 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SFM, leading the conversation. I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
And South Africa dares even issue threats about what is likely to happen after that and so on and so forth. Of course, we will see what threats they are talking about.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame says Rwanda is prepared for a confrontation with South Africa if necessary. And former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, has been released on a warning by the Durban Magistrates Court. Coming up in sport,
the draw for the next round of the Nedbank Cup, and there's plenty Europa League football to tell you about. And the Afghan women played a cricket match today.
Marcus Rashford?
I have a Marcus Rashford story. I think that's
what would a sports bulletin be without anything on Marcus Rashford? John Chirica with those details later in the show. Please share your views with us. 41391 is the SMS line number, charged at R1.50 per SMS. You can also write to us via X, our handle at SABC News_radio, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Thursday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, here's your latest news with Dineo Motaung.
Thank you, Sakina. Top stories. Duduzile Zuma Sambudla released on warning and Trump plans a mass deportation camp. A very good afternoon. Former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, has been released on warning by the Durban Magistrates Court. Zuma Sambudla has been charged under the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act and incitement to commit violence relating to the 2021 July unrest. The MK Party member of Parliament will return to the court on the 20th of March. In other news, Gauteng Health MEC Nomantu Nkomo Ralehoko's proposal to make the contraceptive implant Implanon compulsory for schoolgirls with parental consent has come under fire. She made the comments during her visit to Tshwane Secondary School in the Pretoria inner city, which was part of the province's back-to-school drive. This comes amid concerns over the rising rate of teenage pregnancies in the country. However, Section 27's Kuselo Gyanki says the MEC's approach is unlawful and misguided. She says they've written a letter to her office to raise their concern.
In terms of the Children's Act, children above the age of 12 can actually consent themselves. And parental consent is only required when the child is below the age of 12. The other issue is that it is introducing these long-term contraceptives on a compulsory basis. 2 of the Children's Act give the child that freedom to make their reproductive choices and also to practice body autonomy. Now, once the parents sign that consent form, all of those rights are being taken away from young girls.
We stay in Gauteng, where education spokesperson Steve Mabona is urging parents and guardians who have not yet found placement for their children to make use of satellite schools in the province. This, as today marks the deadline for school late applications. Many schools in the province are already full, leaving some children without placement. Mabona has emphasized that parents must apply today before the applications close.
Because most of the parents that applied late, definitely some of them, they could not find schools, but because they then wanted space, they just click a school that will pop up. So we are assisting those now just to bring them close. But our schools are full. So we are highly pressured in Gauteng. That's why we are introducing satellite schools, which are assisting us daily. And we just want to call upon parents to embrace satellite schools, because we're introducing those schools to assist them and to make sure that our process, moves smoothly.
We move to Limpopo now, where some residents in the Polokwane municipality want the city to fast-track service delivery and infrastructure development before they can officially obtain the metropolitan status. Residents in Seshego, Mankweng and Toka want the city to resolve their water shortage challenge and errors in municipal rates, as well as fix roads. Polokwane has obtained a grade 6 level, which is a requirement for a municipality to get the metro status. These are the views from residents.
Or which criterion do they use to say the municipality reached the stage of metro? We are having shortage of water. You saw what is happening, and all these potholes that we are seeing around the roads, they must be patched. That status is for looting purposes. They want to loot money and increase the comrades' payroll. We cannot allow for metro.
It's been three years now, suffering with water.
Meanwhile, Executive Mayor John Mbe says they are investigating in several water projects to ensure residents in several water projects to ensure residents have adequate water supply.
The issue of declaring a metropolitan is a demarcation process now. The revenue in terms of grading was crucial. We have been able to move from 1.7 billion to 2.5. There's constructions going on in Polokwane, so this augurs well for us to really achieve the metropolitan status in terms of the demarcation. We've got short-term and medium-term projects. Some of them have already started. We are addressing the problem of water.
Lastly, further afield, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will sign an executive order to set up a detention facility for illegal immigrants at the United States high-security Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. Trump says the facility could host up to 30,000 people. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel called the decision an act of brutality perpetrated in an illegally occupied territory. Trump says this is the best way to deal with illegality.
We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of.
Recapping the top story this hour, former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, has been released on warning by the Durban's Magistrates Court. Zuma Sambudla has been charged under the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act and incitement to commit violence relating to the 2021 July unrest. For SFM News, I am Dino Mutaung. Headlines at 12:30. Sakina is on standby with update at noon.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Thanks to know. It is 8 minutes after 12. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Update at Noon. And, of course, we will be bringing you an update, our reporter Nonjabulo, following that lead story in the news. And we'll find out what happened in court where former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, appeared in the Durban Magistrates Court today. And then a few other court stories as well that our reporters are following. The continuation of the bail application of 12 suspects suspects accused of hacking 5 people to death in Inanda earlier this month. Also, the formal inquest into the Highgate Hotel massacre in East London in the Eastern Cape is still underway. And then, of course, we have a few other court stories. A 27-year-old man arrested in connection with the rape of nurses at the Gachwene clinic near Leboagomo in Polokwane is appearing in the Polokwane Magistrates Court. And then, of course, some international stories, the Rwandan President Paul Kagame and his response. So yesterday I read to you that communication that came through from our presidency. And since then, as you have heard on Cathy's show as well and others, that story has certainly developed. So we keeping our eyes and ears trained to find out if there's any further developments, but also still looking at what's happening in the DRC. And Sophie Mokwena will also come in just to talk to us about other developments around the SADC region as well. And then the deadline for late applications for placements for grades 1 and 8 is today, and the Gauteng Education Department introduced this phase in order to assist parents who missed the 2025 online admissions period, and they still trying to secure spaces for over 32,000 applicants. In fact, 32,000 applicants have been placed so far. So we'll find out from the Gauteng Education MEC how many learners still need to be placed. And this is in the main for learners in grades 1 and grade 8. So these are some of the stories, and of course so many more. Let us know what's on your mind as well.